Hello, and welcome to my channel, Anti-Maga Cuban. I am your host, the Anti-Maga Cuban. Alright, let's get down to business. For background, I was born in Cuba, but I came to the United States at the age of 2, and I grew up in Miami. We came during the Clinton administration, and at the time, the U.S. had a very strong economy that my parents that came here, not knowing a lick of English, didn't take much long to ascend from, being poor immigrants to lower middle class, slowly assimilating Cuban Americans. I grew up being told how awful Fidel Castro is. / was, because now he's dead. Of course, during my childhood, he was still very well alive and in power. Fidel Castro was a terrible man. I'm not gonna say he wasn't. Absolutely not. With that being said, there was also a lack of nuance when talking about Castro with my family. It was just, oh, he's just bad, and he's a communist, and he made Cuba communism, and communism is bad, and Cuba suffers because of it, and not to say none of that is true, but it's an oversimplification of the way everything went, and it also does not take into context the way Cuba was before Castro. So, I'm going to go on record and say I don't support communism one bit. But at the same time, while I don't completely oppose capitalism, I also think that in the United States, it's gotten to ridiculous levels. And it's also not this angelic, heroic system. Well, over the decades, the political climate of Miami has changed. When I was growing up, it always felt like Miami was a rather apolitical city. Like, people voted or whatever, but it was never like a far right wing kind of area, but it also wasn't very lefty. I mean, Latino culture in general tends to be more conservative, but that doesn't mean necessarily they vote Republican. There's a difference between a Democrat and a liberal. In fact, there's also a difference between a Republican and a conservative, to be honest. But yeah, Miami was one of those places that voted Democrat for the most part, but wasn't really liberal. Then fast forward to Trump, and things start to change. He starts to resonate with the Cuban voters. At first, I feel like more like a curiosity. At the point Trump came into the election, I was no longer living in South Florida. But I was kind of watching the way my family was treating this guy and looking at this guy with curiosity. They sort of admired him. And I thought he was a dumbass. But I wasn't like completely anti-Trump. I was just like, this guy's an idiot. But I didn't take him that seriously because first of all, I didn't think he would win. I didn't like Hillary Clinton either, but I thought well, she's more likely gonna win, to be honest. Imagine my shock when she didn't win and this guy fucking won. That was kind of jarring. But I'll be honest, the first Trump presidency, well, not great by any means, was much more stable because there were more checks and balances and more shit to to sort of keep him in line a little bit, which is how any president should be, But yeah. But things weren't good, and I think things really went south during COVID. But unfortunately, when it came to COVID, I saw a difference in the way the mindset was in Miami and in Florida in general. Whereas, in the blue state that I live in, COVID was taken seriously for the most part, besides the assholes that didn't want to wear a mask, but those were everywhere. In Florida, people bragged about the lack of restrictions during COVID. They bragged about, oh yeah, Florida's a free state, you don't have to wear a mask. That was a selling point, which is so weird because I was more proud of the fact that my state, Minnesota, was handling COVID pretty well. In the springtime, we had the lowest infection rate in the United States of any state. which was pretty good. Then, of course, George Floyd happened and the riots happened, you know, and that was chaotic. I don't disagree about that. But that brought me to another thing about the right wing, is the way I started to see a lot of my Cuban relatives would, like, badmouth George Floyd. Like, oh, he was no angel, he was a criminal. It's like, okay, he was still murdered by a cop. And at first, the same relative at first was even talking shit about the cop, saying he shouldn't have done that, he's a pig. But after it became the Trumpist narrative that George Floyd was this criminal, I mean, he was a criminal. He had a criminal past, I don't know. And he was, you know, he wasn't, like, away from a life of crime, but also he was a human being who should not have a fucking knee on his neck. That goes without saying. But it just, I saw this narrative, this nasty narrative that started to emerge. But I saw this nasty racism that was thrown at George Floyd by Cuban Americans in my own family, by the way. You know, like, I would have my stepfather talk to me on the phone, and he's like, oh, those blacks in Minnesota are out of control. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's so fucking racist. Yeah, people are fucking rioting because they're fucking been oppressed for hundreds of years. You know, and they don't trust the justice system for valid reasons. God forbid. You know, God forbid people are sick of the oppression that they've been dealing with, instead of just taking it up the ass like they want them to. Like, I'm not saying that burning and looting and shit, you know, is okay, but, you know, take shit in perspective. But I saw my own family delve further and further into the right. And I saw this happen across the Cuban community. My family was not isolated. They're kind of in the average, you know. But even millennials and Gen Zs in my family drifting to the right. And sometimes it's like, okay, you oppose communism. Okay, that's fine. But it's like, you're calling every Democrat a communist? Don't you see how insane that sounds? There's no proof for that. That's insane. And there's really no nuance to any conversation that we can have with them. Any conversation, it gets turned into a shouting match. And they start bringing up random shit. That's the thing that Republicans do that annoys me, is they love to distract with meaningless shit. Trivial shit. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? What does that have to do with anything else? That's a separate issue, and I don't care. Like, fucking throw him in jail. I don't care. Like, well, they act like we're, like, supporting Hunter Biden. Like, I don't care. I didn't even want Biden, but he was the only choice. Really, I wanted Bernie. Oh yeah, Bernie's a socialist, because he calls himself a democratic socialist, which is honestly that was a bad tactic on Bernie, because Americans aren't really intelligent, and they hear the word socialist, and they go, duh. They don't realize his policies are actually pretty fucking middle of the road. Really. Universal health care. Oh, how radical. How radical. You know, that radical socialist nation of Canada. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. But now, Trump won again. During the most nasty racist campaign I've ever seen, accusing Haitians of eating people's pets. Openly, that comedian openly called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. And what happened at the inauguration? Fucking Musk does his Nazi salute. And I have people in my family trying to excuse it. Like, what is going on? So I'm going to record a series of videos where I talk about the issues that I see with MAGA Cubans and why their viewpoints are wrong, and challenge them. And hopefully before it's too late, before this country's completely doomed, they can actually start to turn around and wise up and see the destruction that they voted for. Only time will tell.